welcome to the Mixtape with Scott. I am the host, Scott Cunningham. I'm a professor of economics at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. And this is a podcast devoted to the personal stories of living economists, mostly living economists. Sometimes they're not living and sometimes they're not economists, but usually they're both. And also try to tell the collective story of the profession over the last, say, 50 years. Within the stream of, or the river, the giant river of the history of economics is not just the personal stories of people, what there are, but there's also these little rivers. That's what I've always kind of envisioned in my mind, is like these big rivers, and then within them are these like little separate streams. And I'm not positive that's real, but feels like it should be real. And it was real in Finding Nemo, where there was like a little river inside the ocean. So I've decided that it's real. So inside the big river of economics, there's the history of causal inference as it relates to the industrial relations section at Princeton in the 70s and 80s. A lot of you know I've repeated that about a million times. And then Harvard's statistics department, namely Don Rubin, as well as its economics department in the 90s, mainly Hito Embens and Josh Angris, with Josh kind of linking the industrial relations section with that Harvard. And it really turned out to be a very influential group of people whose ideas were very influential, but also they were influential in terms of, training students, and then those students going places. And so part of the plan for 2024, season 3 of the Mixtape with Scott, what we're going to do is I've got the student list from Dave Card. I got the student list from Josh Angris, and Hito's getting me the student list. I'm just going to go down the list of everybody's students and just try to knock out as many as I can. I want to document where the ideas go by documenting where the students go, and try to start building in my head just a mapping of where causal inference goes. And I think that, so that's like the gimmick. I guess you could call it a gimmick. I'm personally interested in that, but it's also a way to continue to track down more and more people to kind of learn the story of the profession and then learn personal stories. So with that said, today's guest is a female econometrician named Cristine Pinto. Cristine is at San Paulo. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it right. At Inspir Institute of Teaching and Research. It's in Brazil. She's an associate professor there, and I was interested in her because of her work on synthetic control. She, along with Bruno Furman, were the first econometricians after Alberto Abadi to sort of really just dive into that synthetic control estimator and really pushed a lot of its material forward. And I wanted to talk to her, but in the process of it, I also learned that when she did her PhD in economics at the University of California, Berkeley, lo and behold, Hito Embens was one of her advisors, at least briefly. So wanted to introduce her to you. She's amazing. This was a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and y'all have a good holiday, and see you in the new year. Well, it's my pleasure to have with me today someone whose work I've admired for a long time. Cristine Pinto, would you mind telling us your job title and where it is that you work?
So I'm a professor of economics at Inspir in Brazil.
Okay. Great. Where is that? So where in Brazil is it?
In São Paulo.
Oh, Sao Paulo. Okay, great. All right, well, perfect. So why don't we get started? So tell me, what is a vacation that you had as a kid that to this day you still think about from time to time? This is our icebreaker.
Oh, that's hard, but probably my grandmother house that I spent a lot of time with her when I
Oh
was a
yeah.
kid. So I spent like most part of my vacation at this small city in the interior of Minas Gerais. Minas Gerais is a state in Brazil.
Uh-huh.
So I did a bunch of things. So I think it's my memory for vacation as a kid. It's to spend time in a small city, like biking and doing stuff
Oh,
with my cousins and stuff like that.
yeah. You'd go there, what, every summer?
Every summer in Brazil, yeah.
Oh, okay. Was that near
Because
water or anything like that? Or
no, it's just like farms and a small city.
yeah,
So we eat a lot.
Is Brazil near water? Actually, now.
Yeah. You have like the water, but Minas Gerais, it's in the interior. So we have like
Oh,
Rio that's in the water, and São Paulo has some water, but
yeah.
Minas, it's the interior of the
Okay. Okay.
of the
Yeah.
southeast of Brazil. Yeah.
Great. So where did you grow up?
I grew up at Belo Horizonte. That's the capital of Minas Gerais.
Hmm.
So I grew up there. So that's why I'm from this state that's in the interior of the southeast. So we have São Paulo, Rio, and Minas and Espírito Santo. Minas is the only state that doesn't have the water. So,
Okay.
Minas Gerais.
Minas. Okay. And so what's that like?
It's it's a lot of mountains. So we have
Oh,
like high mountains, and so it's basically mountains all over the place. So
and that's where you grew up. So was it kind of rural or is it a city?
no, it's a city. It's a big city. Belo Horizonte
Okay.
is a big city. It's the capital of the state. It's a
Ah,
big city. It's where you have like all these mines in Minas Gerais that you know about, like Vale and so on and so forth. So the
oh,
mines are there. So it's the state that you have the mines for gold in the past, and
oh,
now you have the
wow.
other things. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, so there's like these old historic, like this is where you,
Yeah, it was the first capital of Brazil was Ouro
oh,
Preto is there.
oh, that's cool. So those mines aren't still active though, are they?
Yeah, they extract like the minério de ferro. I forgot the name in English. The
Huh. So you grew up around that stuff.
yeah, Minas Gerais. You Minas Gerais lived like all the GDP per capita of the state comes. Oh no, but great most part of the GDP per capita of the state comes from the industry, right? Of the
Oh, okay. So what did your parents do for a living?
My mother was a teacher,
Oh, okay.
and my father was an engineer, but he passed away like when I was 2.5. So I lived with
Oh,
my mother.
oh, okay. Just your
She was
mom?
a teacher, and then she was a principal of a high school. So
Oh, wow. Do you have any siblings?
no, I'm the only child.
You're the only child? Wait, so where does your mom live now? Does she still live
She still
in
live in Belo Horizonte, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. How close are y'all to one another physically?
Oh, now you're not so far away, right? Because by plane it's like 45 minutes. São Paulo
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, and Belo Horizonte is like 45 minutes, and you have many direct flights every day. So yeah.
Did you have a sense that you were always going to end up back in Brazil?
Yes and no. When I finish my PhD, I really want to come back for personal reasons, right? Because I'm the only child and I have a scholarship from Brazil. So
Mm.
I feel that I need to pay this somehow.
Mm.
So I really want to come back. When I went back, it was funny because then after like a few months, I went to go back to the United States. I was like, I don't know if I want to come to
Oh,
live
yeah.
here anymore. Yeah. So, but then I went back and they spent like, I don't know, half a year in the United States. And I said, no, I think I should go back and be with my family. So then
Uh,
that's when I come back definitely to Brazil. Yeah.
well, what did you love about Brazil as a kid? When you think back now, what was it like as a kid growing up there?
What I love about Brazil, I think I love the food,
Mm.
and I love like to have like this huge family around.
Mm.
Because in Brazil, you know how it works, right? So everybody's a family. I don't know, but
Right.
like you grow up with all your family around, right? So parents, grandparents, cousins, uncles, aunts. So it's
Mm.
very different from the United States, right?
Right.
And I think that's the good thing about being a kid in Brazil.
Yeah. So you just had like your whole family, your family, your extended family was kind of your social life.
Yeah, right. And the friends, and then sometimes the family of the friends become your family. So it's like Brazil have
Oh,
this thing that it's we're always together with the family. So it's nice for a
yeah, that
kid.
does sound nice. That does
Yeah.
sound nice. So, so you didn't move around as a kid. You stayed in that one.
I stayed in Belo Horizonte. I did my undergrad at the Federal University of Minas Gerais.
Mm.
And then when I finished my undergrad, I moved to Rio.
Oh,
So my first job was in Rio because that's the problem. Belo Horizonte, it's a capital, but the labor market's not so like big as São Paulo and Rio. So when I finished my undergrad, I moved to Rio to work. So
mm.
I want to be like I want to work with research. So I moved to work with Ricardo Paes de Barros in a
Oh,
research institute. And then after 1 year in Rio, I applied to my master, and I did my master in Rio at PUC Rio.
oh, okay, okay.
So I went, yeah, and then after my master, I went to the US to do my PhD.
Right, right. So what were you like? What were you like as a kid? Were you, would this have been something as a kid? If your 10-year-old self would have seen what you're doing now, would she be surprised?
No, no, no. I knew that I want to be economist, but I
Really?
want, yeah. All my life, I told my mother I want to be economist, and my mother's like, "What? What are you talking about? You should be a doctor, an engineer. What are you talking about?"
Oh my gosh.
And my idea is like I want to be economist too. And I thought about two things when I was kid. To open like my own firm, right? So I want to have a business at some point, or I want to do like international relationships
Uh-huh.
to apply to Itamaraty, like to be like to work in the embassy and so on and so forth. So I have these two paths in my head,
Yeah.
and and it's like so when I started economics, I was really frustrated in my first semester as a in economics, right?
Uh-huh.
Because I like in the Federal University of Minas Gerais, you have basically the first semester you do with the social science in general, right? So and I think it's really important. But at that point, I was like, I'm not learning math. What happens? I want to have my
Oh.
own business. I need to learn things that I can. So it was really funny, like for me, like so I was really frustrated when I started the economics. But in the second semester, then you have math, you have economic statistics and econometrics, and then
Uh-huh.
and I said, no, now I know what I like,
Yeah.
and
How in
then
the
I
world
got
did you know? How did you even know what an economist was when you were a little kid?
no idea, right? But I have like some uncle that was economist and he had his own business. So in my mind, it's like you
Oh,
have to be an entrepreneur. I need to do
be an
economics.
economist.
Yeah,
Oh, so it
exactly.
was kind of
And
the entrepreneurial people that you knew.
yeah, exactly. All of them were
Oh,
economists. So in my head, like if I do economics, I can have my own business and that's fine, right? So
right, right, right. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. So you had, so you were you had inside you this desire to be an entrepreneur,
yeah,
a
exactly.
business person.
Yeah. But of
Yeah.
course it didn't happen.
Right, right. So then you go to college. So in high school, what kind of student are you in high school?
I was a very good student.
Yeah.
I was a very good student. Yeah.
So
I
you,
like I love math. I love physics. I remember that my professors in the last year of high school, at the senior year, they told me like, "Are you sure you're going to do economics? Because you could do like engineering. Because in Brazil, ec- like economics is not the most competitive course by the time at Minas
right,
Gerais. So they said you can do whatever you want. Like
right,
you can do like engineering, you can do math." And I was like,
right.
no, I want to be economist. And they
Huh.
were like, but I was a very good student. Like I
Why do you think so when you're in high school, what is it that's pulling you into econ and not I mean, because probably by high school you're realizing there's lots of ways you could become an entrepreneur. What's still holding you into econ at that time?
no idea. I think I have this in my head. But for me, and also for me, it was like the course that I didn't at this point, people were telling me you should do like math And I said, no, I like math, but I like other things, right? I like history, I like other things. So I don't want to be a mathematician. I
Mm.
don't like engineering because I don't want to build things. So in my head it was like that. So I want like economics for me was a course that it was a mixture of like math and a little bit of like things that I like in this sense, and a
Mhm.
little bit of history. My mother is a history teacher, so
Mm.
I had this influence at
Oh,
home, right?
right, right.
I read a lot about the things, so I like this part too, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so economics for me was more like something that combines different things that I like,
yeah.
and not only like math, not only history, not so that's why I think
You could
I
see that
chose.
in high school. You could
Yeah,
see already that econ was a lot bigger than just like being a business person.
yes, I could say that. I could see not like that, but I could see that was a course that has a mixture of topics that I like, right?
Yeah,
So it was more flexible than, for example, like if I do math, then I could be a professor like I am
right,
today, but like what else? Like I could work in the financial market and so on and so forth. But with economics, I could do more. So I have this
right,
idea.
right,
And I don't want to do business because in my head, and it's true, right? The math part of economics was stronger than the math part of the business course. So I want
right.
to do economics because of that. So it was
Oh,
very
got it.
strategic in my head,
Mm.
economics. But it's true that I didn't have a lot of sport to do economics because people were like, what are you doing with your life? You should do other things. It was funny.
So wait, so you graduate high school, you go to college, and you
Exactly.
enroll in your econ classes, and
Yeah.
but
In
you were
Brazil, it's
saying that,
different from the United States, right? In Brazil,
okay.
when you go to college, you go to a specific course. So if you choose
Oh,
economics, you do economics. There's no, not like in the United States that you have like 2 years as like liberal arts, and then you choose your major. In Brazil, you go to your major, right? So it's a
ah,
little bit different. So if you choose economics, you're going to do economics. If
I
you
see.
choose business, you're going to do business. So that's how it works.
But that was perfect for you.
It worked really well, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because you knew from an early age. Was that common? Were you unique amongst your friends of like, I know
No,
exactly what I want to do?
no. I
Everybody
have a
else
friend, a very good friend that dropped medical school in the last year.
dropped out.
Dropped out.
Oh, because it just was never what they wanted.
Yeah, and he found out in the last year of medical school.
Uh, yeah, guess it's better
Because
than
you're so
fun.
young. I
Right.
think the United States system is, in this sense, it's better because with 17 years old, it's really
Yeah.
hard to find out who you are and what you are going to be. So it's like,
It's a lot of
so yeah,
pressure to put on a
it's
kid.
a lot
Well,
of
it's like, oh,
pressure.
it may not
Yes.
even be, I mean, it may not even be a lot of pressure. The brain is not even fully formed yet. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
there's not a lot of information they can really
So
act.
yeah, so for example, today that I'm a professor, I have many kids like undergrad kids that drop out like in the second year of economics because they
Oh,
think
because
it's
they
going to be
were,
one thing and then it's other, or people that like started economics and then go to business or
right.
vice versa
Yeah.
because like it's not like what they thought it was going to be, right?
It's
So
got to, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
It's got to be that though in Brazil, higher education sort of is fully aware of this, like, we're going to lose people because we've asked them to sort into a career when they were 17. So, what does Brazil higher education look like? Do they just make it easy for you to quit and start something different, or is it still just pretty, there's a lot of frictions?
I think there are a lot of frictions. They're trying to decrease the frictions. So, for example, the time I did like I finished high school, you have like to do one exam for each school you apply, for each university you apply, right? So
Mhm.
in Brazil system, you need to take an exam to enter the colleges, right? The universities. And so at my time, you need to do one exam for each place you apply, right? So it was really hard to move it from your state, right? For example, at the time I went to apply to USP, That's the State University of São Paulo. That's really good. It is still really good. And so, but it was the same day as the exam was the same day as the Federal University of Minas Gerais. So I need to choose which I was going to, what I was going to do. Of course, I did the one that was close to me. But nowadays, what happens is that you have a national exam that you can take for many schools. That's called ENEM. And so I think the frictions decrease a lot with these new policies and so on and so forth.
Oh,
Because now many schools accept the same exam, so when apply, so it decreases. The frictions are, I think, decreased over time, but still there are a lot. So if you apply, like, so just to finish your question, so if I apply to, for example, if I enter Inspir and I want to change course, it's a process, right? If I want to change for another university, then I need to take the exam again.
Oh, got it. Right. Okay. So what classes in college, that you had, or what professors in college, or what experiences in college really made do you look back and think really changed or deepened your interest in economics? Was it just a very smooth transition, or were there things that just even had big effects?
I think there are things that had big effects. And so my first semester, I want to quit. I was like, what am I doing with my life? And then in the second semester, I start to have math and statistics. And the third semester, I have econometrics. And I said, okay, this is the part I like more. Right. So I knew like micro. So I knew always like micro and econometrics. That's what my thing. Like. Yeah. And so I really like it. So, and then I start to be like, you have like, at my university by the time, you have this program that they have this student that could do research as a group, like a research assistant of some professors, but they hire out the group and then they allocate to some professor this group. So I was part of this group, and I think that make a huge difference. Because I could learn a little bit how was academic research since the beginning.
Yeah.
So, and then I remember by my third year, I started doing research with a professor. Oh. And then at the same time, I got a job at the financial market.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And I could compare. And like after 2 months, I was sure that I didn't want to go to the financial market, that I want to do research. So it make a huge difference in terms of like to figure out what I want. And so
was that intentional on your part? You were kind of wanting to do something to see if you would like it, or was that just
exactly?
Kind of,
I want to test. Yeah. And I love doing research. Like I had a really good advisor. She was amazing. And she did like gender economics with data, everything I like. So
you were already working with data in college?
I always work with data
even as a junior? So that would have been what, like early 2000s?
No, much before that.
Really?
Yeah. So I remember that at the time you didn't have all these fancy computers that you have nowadays.
I bet we graduated high school around the same time. I graduated high school in 94.
Yeah. Mine was 95.
95? Okay, good.
Exactly.
What kind of music were you listening to in high school? Was there American music popular?
Yes, but I can't remember exactly. I wasn't very good with music by then.
You were focused on your career in life. I was getting into trouble. So let's see. Okay, so you decide to go to grad school, and then so tell me about going from college to this master's degree to Berkeley. How come you didn't go directly into a PhD program?
Because in Brazil, like to apply to the PhD, usually you take the master degree in Brazil, right? To get the letters and so forth.
Yeah, that's what someone else told me.
Yeah, that's the straightforward process, right? So you do your undergrad, then you apply to a national exam in Brazil to get to the master. And then you do your master, and then you apply to the PhD.
Oh. So you just learned that in college. Your professors are just like, look, you're not going to go directly to Berkeley. You're going to have to go to this master's degree, get your letters and go. It's very rare to go directly to the school.
Yeah. And for me, it was kind of important because my undergrad was very different from a traditional undergrad in terms of like how much math I had, how much econometrics I had. I had lower course of econometrics, lower number of course of econometrics and math than the traditional courses in the US, like in PUC-Rio, at Inspir, at FGV. It was more like history and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So for me, it was important to have the master. So for me, it was like I had a huge jump, right, from my undergrad to the master. So when I entered my PhD, it was fine. I had the background to go and did the course and so forth, and it was fine. If I went directly from my undergrad, I don't know what was going to happen because I had a huge like deficit in terms of like math.
The math, even
the
though
math, the formal micro and so on.
Oh, so in college, are you thinking in college? When do you in college go, I want to go get a PhD? When did that happen?
No, it happened in the master, right? So what happened is like, it was in the masters. So what happens like when I finished college, my advisor told me, you should go and work with research with someone else. So, and then, so there is Ricardo Paes Barros, that a famous economist, a former Heckman student. He was doing research about labor market and with big data and so forth. And so you should go and do research with Ricardo Paes Barros, because you need to learn more about policy evaluation and so forth.
So that's you want to go study with him?
Yeah. So I went to work with him. So I worked like 1 year with him as a research assistant. And then during this year, he told me, you need to do a master, because to be able to do research, you need to do a master. So then I applied to the master, and then I went to PUC. And then when I was in PUC, I was studying like crazy and trying to do some research and so forth. And at the end of like my master, I was like, what I'm going to do? I could go back to the market and try to find a job like at the NGO or at a research group or someone, or I can apply to a PhD. And by the time, I was very curious about econometrics theory, because the master is only 2 years, bro. So you don't have much time to learn like about econometrics and so forth. You learn, but it's not like everything. It's not like a lot, right? So at the end of my master, my advisor came to me, is like, you need to do a PhD because you have many questions about theory that you couldn't answer during your master. So I think you need to focus on econometrics theory and do a PhD. And I was like, what are you talking about? I did like the whole master thing about doing applied micro, and now you're telling me that I need to do. And he was right? So yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm right, because sometimes I was very like curious about how this work, when this work, when this doesn't work, why I'm doing this, why I'm not doing that. And so that's how I decided to apply to a PhD. But it was like in the last minute. It was like I started my application in August. And for Brazil, this is really late, right? Because you need to get the letters, the GRE, the TOEFL, and so on and so forth. So.
Okay. What year is that? What are we talking about?
99.
Oh, so you apply for grad schools in 99?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. 99. You're in the master's program in 99? That's when you're in the master's program? No.
I started the master program in 96. Wait, I'm confused with the data. So I finished my undergrad. I started my PhD in 2000.
2000. Got it.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. And that's at Berkeley?
At Berkeley, yeah.
Yeah. So was it just one of these things where you just applied to all the top schools and you went to Berkeley, or was there one of these things where you were like, no, my advisor was like, I need to go to Berkeley, or is there a story?
So usually
it's an incredible program. So I mean, but
I was really happy with Berkeley. Usually what happens like at PUC, the professors is usually they try to tell us like, oh, you need to see where you're applying, so your classmate has a chance to apply to other places. So they basically help us to have our list, right? And so what
They
happens
don't
is like,
want you all applying to the same school. They
no,
kind of
because
help
they,
distribute it
sure,
out.
yeah, because otherwise you
Only
imagine
one will
like
get
two
in, and
persons, yeah, two
so they try to
persons from the same
maximize their
university with
yield.
the same letters,
Oh,
with the same like CV. It's very
got it.
similar, right? So they try to sort us out in terms of like where
Oh,
to
that's
go,
smart. Yeah.
and then and usually it's basically on what you want to do as a researcher and where the best place to be. By the time I really want to do econometrics theory, so Berkeley was like one of my top, like one of the top ones for me.
Hmm.
And then I remember that I had a good friend that wanted to do applied micro, and you had exactly the same grades, the same letters. And so the professors come to us like, you need to help each other. You're friends. So you need to decide where you're going to apply and where Cristine is going to apply and where Anna is going to apply. Because if you apply together, it's not going to work, right? And so that's what you did. Like you coordinated. And so,
So I had like compromises. You're like, Anna's gonna
yeah.
apply to Harvard and MIT, and you're gonna apply to Berkeley, and
Yeah,
et
so you
cetera.
sort out one apply to MIT, one apply to Harvard, the other one apply to Berkeley, the other apply to Princeton. The
Mm.
only school that both of us apply was Chicago. Chicago, you both apply. And so you did like that. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
how it worked. Yeah.
yeah.
And at the
Chicago
end,
lets in more people historically too, so maybe
yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't matter as much.
And it has a long tradition to accept Brazilians.
Ah,
So yeah,
right.
in fact, both of us got into Chicago.
So what'd you pick Berkeley for?
I picked Berkeley first because I was between Chicago and Berkeley by the time. So I remember that I visited Chicago and so I think I went to do econometrics and both places were pretty good in econometrics by the time. But Berkeley has a better weather and I
Oh,
hate the winter.
yeah. You it's a little different than Brazil in the winters in Chicago, I hear.
No, yeah, I visited Chicago during the winter and I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm not sure I can survive. It's
You
true.
were like traumatized.
Not traumatized, but I was like, I'm not sure I can survive here.
Totally, totally. Yeah, that would have been brutal. Wow. So you get to Berkeley. So tell me about getting to Berkeley. What was that like? That must have been so neat to land there. I mean, I know now you're like used to it, but what was it like at the beginning?
The beginning was really hard, I think.
Mm,
But the first semester was hard because I didn't have a house. I was trying to figure out things. But then after 6 months was pretty good. I
yeah.
think Berkeley was amazing. It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
yeah. Yeah. What was it like being in the city? I don't know. I mean, you feel like you're in San Francisco, right? When you're in Berkeley, or is it as a student, you're sort of in that little part of town. You're not like all over the bay, all
no,
over.
you are a little, you are in the university, right? So you live like really, I lived really close to the university. So basically my life was like the university and then during the weekend, sometimes I go to San Francisco, sometimes I go to the other cities, but like
Yeah.
my
So you just
life
live
was the
there.
university, yeah. But Berkeley is amazing. I think it has a great weather, great people.
Yeah.
The department was amazing. I
Hmm.
remember that I didn't want to leave Berkeley at some point. I was like, could I stay here? And my advisor was like, no.
Did
Like,
you ever get to know Manisha Shaw while you were there? Did y'all know each other? She would have been the ARE program, though, I think. She was a development. She's my co-author. You don't, do you ever know her?
maybe. I don't
Maybe.
remember the
Okay.
name. Yeah.
That's
Because you
it.
have some contact with people from the year, from the other department, the ARE, but not so much, right?
Not
Because
so much. So you don't
they
interact
did
a
some
lot.
each course. Yeah. Because I didn't do applied micro or development. At the end, I did like econometrics and labor, right? So I was
Right.
kind of more in the economics department, right? So I
Okay.
didn't, yeah.
Okay. So you pretty quickly then it sounds like you sort of sort into econometrics and labor. Like that's like you
Yeah.
knew it almost the moment you got there, or was it sort of
Yeah, when I went there, I had in my head that I want to do econometrics
yeah,
and I want to do a applied field,
yeah,
right? Because I was like, I started everything with applied micro.
yeah.
Now I want to do econometrics, but something applied micro. And so that's how I choose like as a major
Mhm.
econometrics, but
Yeah.
as a minor labor and education, right?
Yeah.
And so
Well, so
it's
what
how
so what professors were you taking your classes from that made a big impression on you? I'm sure it was everybody, but I guess like
Everybody, right? But
what?
I think you have by the time you have a very good econometrics team, right? Right. So you have like Ibens was there,
Oh, he was there when you were
Powell,
there?
he was there, he was my advisor too, right? I started with him and then he moved. And so
Oh,
Ibens
he
was
was your
there
advisor initially.
in the beginning, yeah. Then he
Oh,
left and then I moved to Brian. So so
oh,
so but it was yes, he was there, Powell and Jackson and Rude. So it was a huge
Matt Jackson?
econometric, not Matt Jackson, the one that's in Berkeley, forgot. The not Matt Jackson, the other econometrician.
Oh, I can't think of it. Okay. Well, so then you end up going next to
And I have a very good colleague. So
yeah.
Cataneo was my colleague.
Oh,
Trump
really?
was my colleague. So we have a very good class, like very small groups of people doing
Mateus
econometrics.
Cataneo?
And Mateus Cataneo was my,
Oh, he was your colleague?
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Y'all were
So
the same cohort.
same cohort. So it was a
Oh,
very good cohort of people doing econometrics. You have like four.
oh.
That's a lot for
Yeah, yeah,
econometrics.
yeah. Sure, sure.
So
So
was
you end up
Cataneo,
work
Carolina Caetano, Richard Crump, and
who's at
I.
University of Georgia?
Yeah,
Yeah, so she was also in your cohort? Oh, wow. What a great group. Um, so um so how did you end up with Brian then? I know you said Hito left, but
in
I
the
was looking
left,
at Brian's Vita and I wouldn't have
I
I
was
was
his
seeing all the
first
social
advisee.
network stuff. Yeah.
I was his first advisee, and everything happens
Oh.
because I was his first advisee, and everything happens because I want to study peer facts.
Oh.
And Brian just came out from the job market with a very nice paper about peer facts, right?
Hmm.
And so we started working together, and that's why he.
Did you end up working on stuff on PeerFX? I was looking at your video. I was trying to figure out I was wondering if it was the education part of it that made you connect with Brian, but I didn't look
Yeah,
deep
no,
enough
it
into
was the fear
everything.
facts in education. In fact,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I did. I have a third chapter in my dissertation that I never published that I should. That
Yeah,
was about
story
peer
of
facts in education. Yeah.
okay, okay, okay. So you were interested in peer effects. Yeah, that was so is that what your job market paper ended up being on? Was on peer effects or
Yeah,
was it
exactly.
pure it was and it was like more econometrics though. It wasn't
Yeah, some other econometrics peer facts.
oh, it was econometrics peer effects. Okay, okay, okay. So you end up though, okay, I'm just trying in my head to kind of build a profile of you. So you're specializing. It's clear you're an econometrician and you also have this interest in applied questions, but you've the bulk of your career seems like if am I wrong, the bulk of your vita is like pure econometrics. It's like it's much more pure econometrics, not just like applied econometrics. You're making real contributions to econometric theory. That's how I read your
Yeah,
vita.
yeah.
That's
I
right.
have more papers in econometrics than in applied. In the applied side, I only do education, right?
Yeah, that's
So
right. Okay.
I restrict my applied side to education,
Mm.
and I did much part of my career in econometrics, half and half, sometimes 9%, 10%, depends on the time of the year, because in the education side, I do some policy evaluation, I collect some data, I do some RCTs and so forth.
Okay, okay,
So
okay.
it's true that most part of my papers are in econometrics.
So when you go on the job market at Berkeley, I don't want to skip to the job market, but when you go on the job market, did you have to kind of present yourself, or were the people presenting yourself as an econometrician, or was it? I mean, what was the job market paper? It was an applied micro paper on a.
No, it was a econometrics paper.
Oh, it was an econometrics paper.
It was econometrics paper, but I didn't. In fact, I went to the market a little bit, but not much, because I want to go back to Brazil, right?
Oh,
By the time, so I didn't went like to the traditional whole job market thing.
you graduate Berkeley kind of saying to yourself, I need to go back to Brazil
Yeah, because I had the scholarship.
because you had the
So
scholarship. Was that
yeah,
is that when you get those scholarships, is it a bummer? You kind of think, oh, I got to go back and it's going to mess up stuff, or is it, how does it feel?
it feels like I had the scholarship. If I stay in the US, I need to pay some part of the scholarship back. So it was
Yeah, it wasn't
much
trivial.
harder than to stay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
need to get a very good job to be able to pay the scholarship and to stay in the US.
Mm.
And by the time it was 2008, right? It's at the
Oh, it's
time
the
of the
recession.
prices. Yeah.
Mm.
So I remember that everybody was telling me, if you don't want to stay, you shouldn't go because you can take like it's not a good idea because you have many students and
Right.
people need to find jobs if
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 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 So you so this kind of takes us into your this first paper on your Vita, and I don't mean to jump, but I this inverse probability tilting paper that's in Restud. Is that your first publication?
it's my first publication. It's
That's your
the
first
one of
public.
the chapters of my dissertation.
That was one of your chapters? Wow. So but you didn't publish your job market paper, but you published the inverse probability tilting
I
paper in
published
Restud?
the two others, right? I published
Oh,
this and the JBS2. The two of them
oh,
are from my dissertation, but
okay.
not exactly my job market paper.
Well, how
Yeah.
did you get interested in this inverse probability tilting? And so now I think it's might be worthwhile for me just real quickly to say that if the reader, if the people listening don't know it, they actually might be using inverse probability tilting and they didn't know it because it's in the CSDID package for Callaway Santana diff and diff, right? Isn't it in the state of
Yeah,
package?
it's right.
They're
Yeah.
they're using it and they didn't even know it, probably, or maybe
Yeah.
they did know it. Can you tell me like sort of the first, what is this topic and how did you get into it? How did you get attached to it?
I got attached to it because of Brian. I was
Uh-huh.
working with him as a research assistant, and he had this agenda about like, oh, I want to build methods that are more robust. And then we
Mm,
start to working with this double robust stuff.
right.
And then how it comes these two papers, right? So we entered this literature of causal inference, and it's like, oh, how can you join this literature of causal inference with this literature in the statistics about double robust estimators? And so that's how you build these two papers, right?
Mm,
And so basically it was completely attached because of I was working with Brian with this similar literature, and you come up with this idea about, oh, maybe you can combine these two literatures and build something for the average treatment effect and how you can do in a more general setting. And then you play with this combination of data.
so
That's the setting.
what was wrong with so just so I have the context, I actually feel like I my knowledge of double robustness is real spotty. So like I know it in certain applications only, but I don't know like the full history of double robust. So where is the literature before this paper comes out? Why does this inverse probability tilting be needed if we already have like
You
like
have a Robbins and
yeah.
Robbins paper, right?
Uh-huh.
Robbins paper is a more general paper, right? When it applies to a mean, I think it applies to averages, right?
Okay.
And so you want to apply this to another context. That's the context when you have like missing data, like
Mm.
in a policy evaluation setting, right? So
Oh.
these two papers are two papers about data combination. You have when you have like data combination, you have like some missing data and you have only one piece of data, and you have some missing data, but you have like a population data and some other sample that you can play with to combine.
Mm.
So you have these two papers saying like, how can you pick this idea of Homens that it's like to build a double robust estimators, and he plays with average and bring this to this causal inference literature, trying to provide parameters that are try to provide methods that are more robust to get these causal parameters that people play with in the literature, right?
Right,
So
right.
that's the idea of the
Yeah.
two papers, right?
Okay.
Like, and then after these two papers, there are a bunch of there's a other literature playing with that, right? The double robust estimator. So nowadays, like have double robust estimators for the latte, for many different, many other parameters in this causal inference literature, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you get in? So he presents it to you, but it must have been some like puzzle or some problem that, was not trivial to kind of work out that you work out in the chapter. So like, what was the core sort of problem that you had to kind of figure out with this paper?
In this paper, I think the core problem was for me, it was like I need to learn all this literature about double
Yeah.
robust, right? And how
Mhm.
to come up with a estimator that's double robust, right? So the idea like the way to play is like, let's think if you can derive the influence function, and from the influence function, you think about double robust. I
Yeah.
think this path by the time wasn't clear in my head. Today, if I need to do a double robust estimator, of course I have the whole roadmap in my head, right? So
Right.
first I'm going to derive the influence function, then the influence function has two pieces, and I play with these two pieces to see if I can come up with a double robust estimator. But
Right.
by the time I have no idea how to play with these things, right? So it was
So
the
that was a
first time
huge, yeah,
it was the first time I was thinking like this. It was the first time also that I need to derive a same parametric efficiency bound.
yeah.
Even though you learn this in the econometrics courses, right? When you do the field, when you apply the thing, it's really different, right? You think about projections and the paths you are projecting, how to get the same parametric efficiency bound. So I think I learned a lot in this first paper, right?
What were the
Because I think
skills that what are the skills that you need to derive the semi-parametric efficient bound? I mean, so what you said projection, what was it that really paid off in order to be able to successfully do that? I definitely don't have any of them. So
I think I need to understand a lot of the news papers about how to get it, and to understand like a lot about stochastic process, right? Because we're projecting functions, right? So I was like, okay, now I need to go to the word of functions and think about how to project functions and so on. And then it pay off all this course I took about stochastic process in statistics,
yeah.
right? Because that's the way I was like, now I understand how
Mm.
to apply these concepts, right?
So that
So
was a real growing experience. That
it was a
chapter.
growing experience. I learned a lot with this
Ah,
first paper. Like
huh.
I learned a lot, a lot.
You proud of that paper? I mean,
Yeah, it took a long time to be published, but yeah, I'm proud of that paper, I
yeah.
think.
Huh.
In fact, like I like this paper, but the one that I like more is the JBS one. I think
Really?
the JBS one was the one that I was like, this is very nice, because
Huh.
it was like, because the first paper is based on the average treatment effect, right? So by the time the average treatment effect, everybody knew a lot about it. So it was a contribution. It was an important contribution, but it's like in a setting that everybody knew a lot. But the other one, it's about the ATT, something that was like by the
Oh.
time people like didn't have an idea how to build robust estimators there, and so on and so forth. So the second paper was like my child. By the time I was
Yeah.
like, this is the paper. I think it was like, now I understand like that we're doing something new about ATT and so on and so forth.
Oh. So that was the case like back then in grad school. Actually, this is interesting, not to get on a sad tangent, but you could tell you were like, a lot of people know a lot about the average treatment effect, but there's less focus on the ATT. It wasn't as common of a parameter that people were even talking about.
Yeah, that's true. That's how
Really?
I felt by the time. Like that.
Huh.
It was like many years ago, right? Now,
Yeah. Now
now you know a lot,
now
right?
you know a lot about it, especially with all this diff and diff stuff. But
Yeah, exactly.
so well then why so what made that such a more difficult or a different kind of problem than just sort of a, kind of moving it over to from the ATE? What made it such a novel challenge?
No, it's challenging because it's a different setting, and
Oh,
the parameter, the behavior of the parameter is a little
tell
bit different, right? So
yeah.
it's harder in the case of the ATT, right? So the result for the ATT you had by the time, it was weaker than the AT, right? You couldn't have
Oh,
like all the double robust, like
yeah.
it was double robust, but not as strong as the AT. And so
Mm,
because it's a different setting, right?
mm,
Like now you are like with a subpopulation, so how can you play with that? And so I like more the second paper, even though the first one is in case study, and I think the
yeah.
contribution is there.
Right.
And I learned a lot, but I have like, I think the second one was more like, let's pay attention on this parameter too, and try to build something for this. And it's funny because nowadays everybody likes the ATT because of the difference in difference,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And I
And
was just even thinking with the synthetic control, I wonder if even, I mean, you know, I wonder if all that work then on that one just even puts you in a different mindset for this work that you end up doing on synthetic control.
Synthetic control.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, because it's also I also interpret the synthetic control parameter estimates as an ATT. I mean, even when it's
that's true. Yeah.
you know,
yeah, it's a parameter for the treated, right?
It's for the parameter for the treated, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and this I said. So there's a part of my research agenda that's like trying to contribute to this causal inference literature, right? So
yeah.
And the synthetic control was funny because Bruno Ferma was my colleague, right?
He went to Berkeley also?
No, he went to MIT, right?
Oh.
And he was an econometrician when he went to the market. He became an econometrician when he came to Brazil, right?
Oh.
It was funny because he came to me with many questions. He was like, Chris, I don't know how to apply this to this, how I can do this to this. And then we start talking about a lot of the problems. And at the end, he became an econometrician, a very good one.
Oh, so wait, when you said he was your colleague, did he work at your school?
No, he worked because I was at FGV first, right? I spent like my first 10 years in Brazil at FGV. At São Paulo School of
and that's where y'all overlapped. Y'all overlapped
Yeah,
there?
that's where overlap. Yeah, it was his second job, right?
Oh, okay.
And then he came, so you have like many years of overlapping at FGV.
Oh. Were you already thinking about synthetic control before the two of you got together?
No. It was his questions. Like he came to me and he's like, I don't know. First of all, he came to me and he's like, I have a problem. I'm applying difference in difference, and I don't know how to do inference when I have like field treated units.
Right.
Because none of the methods, none of the methods that I apply work. I was like, and then I was trying to figure out to him why it's not working. And so
what was not working? What was he showing you that wasn't working?
Because he was trying to apply Collin-Taber, but Collin-Taber has the homokedasticity assumption behind, and he didn't have homokedasticity in his paper.
Yeah.
It was applied paper that he was doing. He was like, I don't know how to do this. And I know this is not right, that I'm over-rejecting. I think by the time he was over-rejecting. And so how can you do something to fix it? And then how everything started. It was with this applied paper.
That's where it started it? That's what started even the work on the synthetic control?
Because
y'all are thinking about small number of units.
Exactly. And then you came, and then by the time it's like, oh, maybe I should move to the synthetic control.
Oh.
And then you start talking about the synthetic control, and I was like, yeah, I think it's a new method, but I don't fully understand the method, in the sense that I don't fully understand the theory.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, so let's try to do something together here, because I think I want to move to econometrics. And then
so you were kind of he ends up moving towards you to learn. We all end up being partners in
not to learn with me, right? He's really smart. It's like we start to working together.
Yeah.
Because he had many questions, and he's like, oh, I think I want to be an econometrician because this is really nice, like what we're talking about and doing. So and then he moved it to the field. It was really nice. And then that's how we started.
Because there's not really a logical connection, I guess, now that we're talking between that. There's not the peer effects. And then, so you guys together just kind of dive into this synthetic control stuff. I've always kind of thought of you guys as like the first post-Abity synthetic econometricians working on synth. Is that correct? I always felt like it's more active now, but it seemed like for a while it wasn't really more than it was applied people, if anybody, but I didn't see a lot of, econometricians doing much until y'all, but maybe I'm misreading it. I feel like y'all have been very active on it from a very long time.
But I think we're the first. I don't know if the first ones, but one of the first ones should think about, let's do a theory for this estimator, right? Because it's not clear for us, like identification. And I think Abadi did a really good job, of course, like in showing how the method works. But at some point, Bruno was like, I want to understand how to apply this method and which assumptions should I care about, how this work, in fact, in terms of like when you get consistent, when you don't get consistent. But the question was like, he had an applied paper and you did the difference in difference, and he was like, oh, maybe I should move to synthetic control. And they're like, but you have no theory about the synthetic control, in fact, right? So, and then you start working on that. And then by the time it's true that you have a little bit of theory that comes from the Abadie paper,
Yeah.
right? Abadie did some theory for the synthetic control,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like,
What was missing? Because there's the 2010 JASA, but what is it what's in there and what's not in there that you're talking
I
about
think
when you
what
say
is
theory?
missing is like, first of all, I think what Bruno and I did in the first place was like, let's think about the synthetic control using the setting of the factor models. In
The
a
factor
factor
models.
model,
Yeah.
in the factor model, like in Abadie, what's the identification assumption? What means, and Abadie has the identification function, that's the perfect fit, right?
Right.
But let's put like in a formal way, what's the identification assumption? What's the perfect fit in the context of this model? I think you
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah.
And then you are like, okay, but now you know, like, so if this assumption holds, that's the result you had in Abadie. Then the estimator is going to be consistent when the pretreatment goes to infinite. How do you prove that, right? Because Abadie has the bias calculating the supplemental appendix, but you're like, okay, but how you show like for the applied person, the conditions they need to think to be able to see that they are providing a consistent, they are getting close to the causal effect, right? So we are kind of like trying to say, look, you understand the result of Abadie and you get a result that's very similar, right? Of course, but putting like in another context, putting another words, right? So if you want to tell to applied people like, do you have perfect fit? Or if you show you the graph, it's enough or not, right? What the assumptions behind it, right? So that's the idea. And so that's the idea because like, and that's everything comes from Bruno, like applied paper that he wants to do the diff and couldn't. And then you're like, okay, let's fix the inference part. And at some point he's like, oh, but maybe I should move to the synthetic control. But okay, how do I think about this method in a more formal way? And so I think there are a bunch of people that were thinking about synthetic control of the time, not a lot of people. And I think the point is like, let's do it in a formal, very formal way to show people like, oh, to get a consistent estimator, you need this, and this.
And that's
really
where you
hard to
guys are
obtain.
like linear. You're going to say the factor model, and then you're going to assume this factor model, and then you're going to work, and then you're going to work out what exactly, given this fact, there is a references to factor models in the 2010 JASTA though, right? By Abadie?
Yeah, there is a factor. Yeah.
But so where did he not go far enough in that based on what we're talking about?
I think he doesn't, like he said, like, oh, there's this identification assumption that's perfect fit, but it's not very formal, right? So
Got it.
And then you did a different, it's like a different way to formalize the synthetic control, right?
Yeah.
So you think like, oh, to get a consistent estimator, you need these weights to converge to the weights that satisfies the assumption. What are the conditions that you need for that to hold? And so it was more like you get a very, you get a very similar result to Abadie, but just with like more steps in a more formal way, I think, right?
Well,
and
so
showing
go ahead. Sorry.
And showing that, look, it's really hard to get perfect fit.
Yeah.
Right? So when you look at this graph, and I think that's the message of the paper, right? When you look at this graph, if you have trends, if you have many things, you could get the perfect fit, but it's not the perfect fit you want, right? Because you want to match like fixed effects, and if you have covariates, right? And you don't want to match trends, right? And I think the idea of the paper is to show that, right? It's not like a trivial assumption, right? Because I think by the time people are like, oh, this is much better than the difference in difference. And in my head was like, I think it's a really nice method. It's very transparent and I completely love the method, but it has an identification assumption as a difference in difference, right? And it's not like that's stronger or weaker than the difference. It's a completely different assumption that people need to discuss that, right? And so
when you write this stuff at the beginning, not now, but like back then when you were first starting to make these discoveries, and you would go talk to an applied person, and they understood that with difference in differences, you need parallel trends. Maybe they understood that. What were you telling them that they needed to be thinking about for synthetic control? After you've already made after you've kind of made these discoveries of what was inside the estimator and what it needed based on that factor model, what were you starting to explain to them that they needed to be thinking about?
You're thinking, oh, you need to get perfect fit. It needs to
Perfect fit.
really be perfect. And you need to do many robustness tests to show that you have the perfect fit, right? So, for example, you cannot cherry picking, that's the other paper you have. You cannot cherry picking the specification that gives you perfect fit. It doesn't work like that. You need to have many specifications showing that, in fact, you can get these lines really, it's not close, right? One needs to be like really the other, right? And so, and you're like, oh, if you have a like huge trend, you should like the trend and show that the trending, the series, you still get perfect fit because you don't want to match threads, right? Another thing that I think was important by the time is people like, oh, if I have like 3 years in the pre-treatment period, you should use synthetic control. And I think you were like very verbal in saying like, no, synthetic controls work if you have a large pre-treatment period because the time series is really important, right? Basically, you build your contrafactor.
So it's not just perfect fit. It's perfect fit. It's these two dimensions of perfect fit over long T.
Yeah, you have initial over T. A lot of other thing that was, and I think Abadji did a really good job in the 2020 paper that he has at the economic literature to summarize, right? These, right, showing like, look, like many things that like for us was like you're trying to verbalize, he did in the 2020 paper. That's really important. For example, look, synthetic control works when you have like a fixed number of control units. If you have like a large number of controls and a small T0, you can overfit. So you're going to get perfect fit because you overfit. So it's dangerous, don't do that, right? So all these things I think was really important for the literature to verbalize in the sense, look, it's a new method. It's very nice, but you have assumptions and you need to be careful how you do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think by the time people are like, oh, I'm going to move from diff and diff to static control because it's easier to do. It was like, no, wait, it's not like that, right? There are trade-offs as usually in econometrics. It's like,
what do you see as the biggest trade-offs
in synthetic control?
Going from diff and diff to synthetic control?
I think synthetic control, it's harder to have the identification assumption. I think it's not trivial to achieve perfect fit. And in fact, like Abadji was really clear in his papers that without perfect fit, you should not use synthetic control, right? So I think the trade-off is like that. Like it's harder to convince people that you have the perfect fit. It's a less trivial assumption to discuss than the parallel trends. I think you're much more usual with like parallel trends. Nowadays you have like John that's doing a really nice job in testing for the parallel trends and providing bounds for this. So it's a literature that's like, for example, if one of my students come to me saying, should I use different GIF as static control? Usually it would be use different GIF because you have more techniques that you could use to convince people that you're getting close to the causal effect.
You don't have that now. You don't feel like that's the case. Do you even think in the long run that could be possible with synthetic control? I
think so, but I think it's harder to work with the synthetic control, right? Because the theory is harder, I think. Because the difference, it's the standard panel data, right? You have like large N, small t. When you go to the synthetic control, you have large T, small n.
Yeah.
So it's harder to work there, right? Because like you build your contrafactor using the time series, but then to estimate your causal effect, you use your cross-section. So, and you don't have cross-section variation to do asymptotic approximations in this size. So you need to do all the asymptotic approximation, use the time.
Yeah.
So do you understand what I'm saying? I think it's harder to think.
So it's funny. So I was kind of interpreting your cherry picking paper, which is a great title. That cherry picking synthetic control paper. Until this conversation, I almost kind of was thinking of it as beware of, p hacking in synthetic control. But in a way, now it sounds more like it's a paper that's advising you on whether or not you have perfect fit. Maybe. right? Because it's
Yeah,
giving you 14 different specifications and some exhibits that you can show. You can show this table with these p-values. You can show this new
exactly.
kind of figure, which was not in the original, to sort of give some confidence over the robustness of the perfect fit. Is that right?
Is that right? It's how I like.
Oh, that's a
It's
more
how it's my
positive that's a
interpretation of
more
the paper.
positive
Yeah,
framing of it. Yeah.
yeah, it's my interpretation of the paper. Also, I think there's a very nice result in this paper
Yeah.
that I like, that you show that when T0 goes to infinite, no matter the specification, no matter how you, which set of, like, for example, to calculate the weights, you can combine like pretreatment outcomes with covariates, right? So I can use all the pretreatment outcomes, I can use some pretreatment outcomes with covariates. So I think one nice result of that paper is to show like when T0 goes to infinite, all the specifications converge to the result of including all the pretreatment periods. That's why usually people say using the specification that includes all the pretreatment periods should be the benchmark,
Yeah.
because when T0 goes to infinite, all the
Okay.
other forms to calculate the weights will converge to this one. And I think it's a nice result, right? To
Yeah.
show people like that's why you should start with like using all the pretreatment periods, all the pretreatment outcomes, and then move to other things that include covariates if you want. And I think it's a nice result too, right? To
Yeah.
be more positive in terms of like helping people to apply the method that I think is a nice method,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So that's my reading of the paper, right?
It's funny though, listening to you, because you don't talk as someone who's like has this attachment to it, like an affection for it. It's kind of like you're very detached from it. You're like, it's a nice method. It's not like you're not like a proponent or a dissident. You're very descriptive and scientific about what it does, and here's what it's for, but it's not like you're advocating for it or something like that.
I never advocate for any method. I think all the methods has all the methods have the trade-offs, and you need to learn how to play with them. That's
Right.
my that's usually how I teach.
That's how I
I
teach
teach a
too.
course about causal inference, and I use your book a lot. So that's how I teach my course. I said, look, this, like, I'm going to show you many methods, and the idea is that you learn how to apply them. And most, it's not only how to apply them, it's to learn when you can apply them, right?
Right.
Because you have trade-offs, right? And you need to choose what's the best method for each situation, right?
Mhm.
So I talk about all the methods in the same way. The difference is the same. I like the new literature. I
But it
like the
doesn't
old.
mean that it's the right tool for the problem that you're studying just because it was for
Exactly.
somebody
Yeah.
else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like the difference is the solution for everything, right?
Yeah.
Because now you have the staggery, because now you have bound. No, like, and you need to know when to apply the methods. I think that's the most important part for applied person, right?
Right.
Learn when they can apply the method. Which situations they apply each method, because each
Right.
method has the trade-offs, right? So
Yeah.
and I
Yeah, I
think
know. It's funny. I was speaking with someone recently, and they were from a different field, and they were a student, and they were saying, in my field, what's state of the art right now is not diff and diff, but propensity scores. And I just was kind of saying, well, look, that's not really the right way to think about it anyway. I mean, you should use whatever tool is appropriate for the question that you're trying to answer, which is both what is your question and then what data do you have, and is it, how are those treatment assignments being generated, and stuff can be state of the art, I guess. I don't even know exactly what that means per se, because things can be you can use some state of the art method that absolutely doesn't recover a causal effect, and you can do something that you thought was whatever, like from the past, and it does do it. So I mean,
yeah, that's true.
it's not like it's the question is, to me, is, what is your parameter, and what assumptions are needed to get it, and are those remotely satisfied in your data, and then what's the estimator that'll do it. I mean, so yeah. Well, so do you have any more synthetic control papers under your that are just dying to, that got burning a hole in you that you got to get out?
No, no. Now I'm working with more RDD. I have some papers in RDD now.
Oh, you do? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Cool.
Yeah, now I'm more like have like one thing that I'm really curious about that comes from applied papers. So I have many people asking me how to do RDD over time, right?
Yes.
Because so that's
Comes up
something
all
that
the
I think
time.
all the time, and I think people are not, they don't know how to do it. They are
Yeah.
doing the best as they can, but that's something that you can contribute
Oh,
a
that's
lot.
probably a big valuable
Yeah, so
thing to
now
work on.
now I'm focused on this
Oh, that's smart.
staggering RDD, not staggering, right? How
Oh,
to do RDD
staggering in
over time.
time.
Yeah, how to do RDD over time. That's something that's I'm
Oh,
thinking a lot about lately
oh,
in terms
that's
of like the infer causal literature.
oh, that's pretty
Because I have
pretty
like two
valuable.
students that were doing this and they don't know how to do it and make
Right.
me like, oh, I need to help them
Yeah.
somehow because like I will have problems of compliance over time,
Uh-huh.
right? Because the RDD we are doing bandwidth, so the compliers can change, the treatment can
Right.
change, and you have no idea how to deal with these problems in this
Wow.
literature. So
Wow.
now I'm moving to, that's how I work. Sometimes like I get the questions from the applied people and try to solve, right? And I think
Yeah.
synthetic control, there are a bunch of people doing really nice jobs in terms of synthetic control. I think synthetic control has a lot of things to do, especially in the inference part, right? We still don't have a good inference method
Yeah.
for the synthetic control.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. Bruno and I had a paper that you saw a little bit about that, but you need to go back to this paper. So I had this, and I think this is the big thing about synthetic control now, how to do proper inference in synthetic control. And also I like the literature that combines synthetic control with other methods. I think it's really smart to combine
Like the synth diff and diff deal.
like the synth and diff and diff. Like I think it's really smart, right? Because the
Yeah.
idea is good, and when you combine with the other methods, you improve a lot how you can do inference. So I
Yeah.
think that is a good way to think. Yeah. But yeah, I just had this inference paper that Bruno and I have, but it's an old paper. I don't know if you're going to solve the problem there because you're stuck. Like,
Yeah.
and so yeah, but now I'm working like with RDD and more in this world of like trying to think about how I can help my students that have data over time and have RDD that they want to do
Yeah.
this over time, how you can do it, right? Okay,
Well,
of course you can do a difference in difference, but it's not the way to go probably, right?
Right. Well, the fact that you're applied and an econometrician, it seems like you have your ears on, in both areas. That's got to be pretty valuable for thinking about jumping to RD in time. That's something that you're hearing, demand from probably less from the econometricians and more from the applied people. Comes up all the time.
Comes up all the time. And I think, and my feeling at the seminars is that people don't know how to do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't even teach it because I don't know what to say about it. I usually just sort of stick to the more because my workshops are usually more intro level and they're not going into the frontiers as often. I've never felt comfortable talking about it because I only know of this there's this one paper. I think it's an annual. What is it? It's on regression discontinuity in time. Is it Labs?
There are some papers about it. There's Granby has applied paper that she does a paper that combines, right? When she has like a time and she uses the time to help to disentangle the unconfoundedness. I think there's this paper that there are some papers in the literature, but but few. And we still have many things to think about, like how to do kind of a staggering difference in difference.
Right. Well, I've kept you for over an hour. It's so nice to meet in person finally.
It was really nice to talk to you. I hope that this worked somehow.
Yeah, no, this was great.
I'm very sorry about my voice. That's not perfect today.
Perfect. You were great.
Gotta see us through. Honey,